This is the August 13th, 2024 regular meeting of the Chatham County-Savannah Metropolitan Planning Commission. The Planning Commission consists of Ms. Karen Jarrett, Chairwoman, Mr. Travis Coles, Vice Chairman, Mr. Tom Wildwoody, Secretary, Ms. Lorraine Bowles, Treasurer. Board members are Mr. Dwayne Stevens, Ms. Tracy Amma, Mr. Joseph Irvine, Mr. Michael Kagler, Miss Amanda Wilson, Mr. Jay Melder, Mr. Jeff Nortricia, Mr. Joseph Welch, Miss Corinne Ross, and Mr. Stephen Pluck. The MPC Executive Director is Melanie Wilson.
Good afternoon. Oh, thank you. Good afternoon. The August 13th regular meeting of the Chatham County-Savannah Metropolitan Planning Commission will now come to order. We'll pause for Pledge of Allegiance. If you please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. For staff, petitioners, and members of the public who are participating, our procedures will be as follows. The agenda is broken down into several parts. First, notices, proclamations, and acknowledgments. Next, the consent agenda, which consists of items for which the applicant is in agreement with staff recommendation and there are no known objections. This will be followed by regular business, old business, and adjournment. For each agenda item on regular business, staff will make a presentation. The staff presentation will then be followed by a presentation from the petitioner should they elect to do so. The petitioner will be allotted a time frame of no more than 20 minutes. The board may then ask questions of the petitioner or staff for clarification. Afterwards, the floor will be open for public comment. If you wish to comment on the item that the board is considering at the time, members of the public that are here in person must fill out a speaker card and give it to staff. If you are participating virtually, use the raise your hand feature on your screen. Do not use the feature until the item you want to comment on is being considered. At the appropriate time, you will be recognized and staff will unmute your microphone. At the end of your allotted time, as determined by the chair, your microphone will be muted and the chair will recognize the next speaker. The total public comment time will be less than or equivalent to the petitioner's presentation time. Therefore, for those participating online, it is important that you use the raise your hand feature during the hearing on that item if you want to speak on a petition. Once the floor is closed for public comment on a petition, no additional public speakers will be allowed. If you are not certain you want to speak, still use the raise your hand feature, or if in person, fill out the speaker card. You will have the option to decline when your name is called. After public comment, the petitioner will have the opportunity for rebuttal and then address any additional needed questions by the board. Finally, the board will take action. All right, our first agenda item is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Irvin, second.
Okay, all in favor, voice vote, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have no notices, proclamations, or acknowledgement. There are several items that were requested to be removed from the final agenda. The first is a comprehensive plan, future land use map amendment for 1950 Benton Boulevard, 76 Highlands Boulevard. Is there anyone here who wanted to speak on that item? All right. The second one is a map amendment request to rezone from PDC to IL and BC, 1950 Benton's Boulevard, 76 Highlands Boulevard. Anyone here to speak on that item? The third item is a comprehensive plan future land use map amendment at 2514 Whitaker Street. Is there anyone here to speak on that item? All right, and the fourth item is a map amendment request to rezone from TN2 to TC1, 2514 Whitaker Street. Anyone here for that one? All right. The fifth item is a comprehensive plan future land use map amendment for 1421 Whitaker Street. Is anyone here for that item? Okay, finally, we have a map amendment request to rezone from TR2 to TC1, 1421 West Gwinnett Street. Anyone here for that item? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved to remove said items from the agenda.
Bowles
Second.
sec- Bowles second.
All right. All in favor, voice vote? Any opposed? All right. The consent agenda has two items. One is the approval of the July 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes, along with the, never mind, go ahead, let's do that one. Have a motion for that?
Urban, so moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And then we have a motion, or an item to authorize the executive director to execute and file FY 2026 FTA Transit Planning Grant.
So moved.
Second, Bowles.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, there is no old business. Our first item in regular business is a text amendment for zoning ordinance, section 7.8.10, 7.9.10, 7.10.11, 7.11.10, and 13.5, true stucco in the historic district.
Good afternoon, Jonathan Mellon, Director of Historic Preservation and Urban Design at the MPC. This is pretty straightforward, so I'll be quick. To give you a little bit of background, this started earlier this year when we had a proposal for a carriage house on Brady Street. And the Historic Preservation Commission had a great deal of discussion about whether it was appropriate to keep the existing rules, which stated in the definition of true stucco that stucco could only be applied onto masonry construction. And so I and my staff were tasked with doing a deep dive into what other cities, other municipalities do in terms of the application of stucco. I also had extensive consultations with stakeholders here in Savannah, over 20 builders, architects, homeowners. Also spoke with some former colleagues who work for the federal government at the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts and the National Park Service, and the D.C. Historic Preservation Office, as well as the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. As such, what is before you is the result of a deliberative process, first with a subcommittee of the Historic Preservation Commission, then the full Historic Preservation Commission, and then the full Historic District Board of Review, all of whom have unanimously endorsed the proposed amendment that's before you. As you noted, it would apply to the Savannah Downtown Historic District, the Victorian Historic District, the Cuyler Brownville Historic District, and the Streetcar Historic District. And what we are proposing is the change of the definition of true stucco to strike the portion of that sentence which states that it can be only applied over masonry construction. One of the concerns that was also raised was this was really overstepping the bounds of what the board and the commission have authority over. It was getting into means and methods. Okay. We were getting into means and method, which is really, as you probably know, we do not, in the Historic Preservation Department, we do not have any jurisdiction over the interior of buildings. As such, that's the change that's before you. In addition, we cleared up some of the language. It was a little bit confusing. You may have noticed in your packet that it specifically said you could not do one part stucco over certain types of construction. But in fact, you should not be allowed to do one-part stucco at all. So we removed those two types of construction from there to just say no one-part stucco. So to summarize it, homeowners will now be allowed to do true stucco over masonry and frame construction. And I'm here if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this? Please state your name for the record.
Yes, ma'am. Ellie Isaacs, Director of Preservation for Historic Savannah Foundation. HSF wants to thank staff for their hard work on this and applying it to the entire ordinance at one time. We want to be on record in support of the proposed text amendment. The language is much more comprehensive and provides much needed clarity.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, any comments or discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Urban, move to accept staff's recommendation.
Plunk second.
All right. Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Absolutely.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Plunk?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Welsh?
Yes.
And I too say yes. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our second item is a subdivision with variances within RSF 6 zoning at 122 Darling Street, 24-003928-0/SUBP.
Good afternoon, Madam Commissioner, Commissioners. My name is Brad Clement. I work on development staff here at the Metropolitan Planning Commission. The subject parcel located at 122 Darling Street is a dual frontage lot between King and Darling. It is in the Woodville neighborhood, so north of Louisville Road, south of Highway 80, adjacent approximately to Fair, to give you some context of the neighborhood. The request is to do a minor subdivision, which would not normally come before this commission. However, there are variances attached to this subdivision from existing development standards that would create some non-conforming lots. The lot currently has a church located on the parcel, but as the lot has changed ownership, it no longer is a church use because that is a special use in a residential district. So it is simply an existing non-residential lot in an RSF 6 single-family district. The reason for the size and shape and configuration of the lot was to allow for that non-residential use. The petitioner is asking to subdivide this property to create a picture of the church, to create 3 residential lots. The 2 smaller lots located along King Street is where the nonconformity would be introduced vis-a-vis the variance process. The development standard in question is a reduction of the 60-foot lot width frontage required by RSF 6 by 10 feet to 50 feet. The square footage of the proposed lots would still exceed the square footage required of the zoning district, so they're sufficient in size to accommodate normal development standards. We're not overbuilding lots. That's not what's being proposed. What this would also do is on the rear, the Darling Street address, that would make that particular use non-conforming in multiple ways. So it could only be a residential lot going forward. Either the former church building could be redeveloped for residential use, or it could be demolished and the lot could be rebuilt. The MPC staff looked at this, and the section in the ordinance that would allow for the creation or the introduction of new nonconformities, which is not something we typically would support, goes to section 8-2023B, which involves prevailing prevailing development patterns, neighborhood character, and best use of the parcels, and returning these lots to a residential use in a residential neighborhood and cleaning up the non-existent special use of the church seems to fit those in terms of all the flavors of appropriateness, minus the reduction in lot width along King. So we are recommending approval of the proposed subdivision with a couple of conditions: that the final submitted plat that will be recorded reflect this decision, explaining how the non-conforming status came to be, with the date, case number, and the result of the MPC decision. Also, as indicated, the plat should reflect that the church use will not be reestablished with the subdivided parcel in the current configuration, simply because the lot would be so overwhelmingly non-conforming with so many other standards. So pending your questions, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Is the petitioner available?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Sit down, please. Oh, you're the petitioner? Come on up.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Petitioner is on.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Coles.
Mr. Coles?
Can you hear me?
Oh, okay.
You can come up as well.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is Travis Coles representing the petitioners, Wendy Moynihan. Mr. Moynihan is in the audience, so he's available for questions as well. I appreciate the staff's recommendation for approval. I do have a couple of exhibits if you wanted to show those, basically showing that there are several other properties in that neighborhood that exist with the same lot sizes. And I'm happy to take any questions.
All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Coles or Mr. Moynihan?
Exhibit.
All right.
Bowles.
There we go. Madam Chair, Commissioner, can you see that?
I can. I'm not quite sure what we're looking at here.
So we're looking at other examples of bad examples based on
I see.
prevailing development patterns as it relates to existing non-conforming lots, which is something that we took into account when reviewing this.
There should be another exhibit on there that actually shows the,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
there it is, thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or staff? All right, I do have one speaker card for Ms. Pamela Anderson. Please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Pamela Anderson, President of the Woodville Community. I am, how would I say? I am not against building homes in our community, but I am against the 50-foot with the 10-foot variance. It is with great respect and concern as President of the Woodville Community Action Organization and as President that I am requesting that the non-conforming subdivide of the property at 122 Darling Street, formerly the Hideaway. Woodville is very happy to see the community continue to prosper with affordable and sustainable housing. We are very receptive of the various builders and realtors in the community. I am against the subdividing of the property at 122 Darling Street into 3 separate lots. In our community plan, we ask for sustainable lots. When you subdivide most lots, you are not adhering to what the community did to alleviate from smaller 50-foot lots in the community plan of 2012. The vision was to make lots more economically affordable to 100 feet by 133. In most cases, the lots of 50 to 60 feet by 133 feet are from the past. Woodville did a community plan with a vision of 100-foot lots. We wanted more space between each home and a decent front and backyard without the stacked shotgun homes. These lots are prime property and most affordable for a single or 2-story dwelling. In our plan, we asked that a lot of 100 feet not be subdivided to less than 75 feet to have sufficient space around the property and not impede on the neighbors on each side. This was not followed by our plan when it came to the Paderewski construction contractors. The contractors were building on Listener Avenue, and they built homes, one home, never stayed, no one was put in it. Then they falsely came and attained the other property and came back and put 2 more homes up, one on each side, on 33 feet. Those were shotgun homes. So when those people moved into those homes, they had arguments of property because they were parking in front of their homes. The street doesn't allow for parking on it. There were fights, police were there, just arguments about it because they were too close together. So we wanted to do away with the 50 feet in order to have sustainable homes outside and inside. When you did the new zone, we did 75 feet on a 100-foot lot. We asked that that be sustainable for homes. Now you come back and you keep breaking them down, giving variance, and we get besides what we're asking for in our community with the new builders. They have come back and forth with this. There's not enough street that allow for the parking of these homes when you put them that close. That was from when it was the county coming into the city. We just ask that you not do that. You can have a 100-foot lot and put a sufficient home on it, whereas not breaking down from 100 foot to 50 feet each, and then having those neighbors argue about you're parking in front of my home. We don't have enough room. You got 2 parking spaces in front of your home, that's it. So when you have a gathering, everybody's blocked. As I say this,
Thank you.
our
Thank you,
goal is a
ma'am.
neighborhood consistent of safe.
3 minutes is up, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any questions for Ms. Anderson? All right, would the petitioner like to comment?
Just to say that the construction envelopes on the survey show that it would be within all side yard and front and rear setbacks. And on that exhibit, it also shows that there would be driveways for those properties.
Go ahead, Mr. Milder.
I think I need a clarification. I understand that Travis Coles is a commissioner on this board
Yes.
and today is acting as an agent for the petition. I think I just want to make sure that we're clearing that up. And 2, that there's also some, I think we just need to proceed with caution. 1, because there's an interpretation issue with regards to whether or not this case should be first seen as a variance versus an issue at MPC, which may be a smaller matter, but I think that I'm just concerned about the challengeability of this decision now based on, I think, this layer of complexity with a commission member, and I didn't get a sense, was he formally recused?
Oh, I don't believe he was formally recused, but he is,
I'm not in attendance as a board member today, so I will not be voting on any items today.
he can't vote anyway.
I think that's, I'm certain, I want to make sure that we're clear about what our understanding of conflict of interest is, and I'm certainly am not doing this in any, I mean, Mr. Cole is an amazing member of this board. I just want to make sure that any decision made today is, wouldn't be seen void, which is not the legal opinions I'm getting currently from the city's legal department as they're keying in on this issue. So I just want to make sure that we're being open and transparent today, and I don't want any decision here to be challenged.
Do you have a suggestion?
I would have a suggestion that we table this item and come back to it once. Perhaps we can make sure that we've got all the right recusals and conflict of interest statements figured out, as well as this variance versus ordinance interpretation issue, which might be a small matter and wasn't anything that I was going to bring up today, but with this kind of, wasn't aware that
Mr. Cole,
there
have
was
you
this
heard that?
issue.
I have.
And you comfortable with tabling?
Mr. Moynihan, if he is able to speak to that.
To the conflict of interest?
Well, no,
Tabling.
to
To
tabling
Taylor?
the
Well,
item.
I would obviously prefer to.
Need to state your name.
Yes, please
I'm
state your
sorry.
name.
My name is Michael Moynihan. I would like to accomplish this as soon as possible. The reason Travis has done this is because we're friends. We met doing theater performances, and so he's helping me out on this.
I understand. You do understand the concerns.
I do understand the concerns, but since Mr. Coles is not going to vote on this issue, hopefully that allays the concerns. It's up to the rest of the commission.
Go ahead, Mr. Irvin.
I am rarely struck without words, but considering we have another commissioner who routinely has matters that come before us and we voted on before, we've already established that precedent. And having established precedent, it's kind of dangerous to go back and say, now we're going to re-establish precedent.
But the other commissioner that we have come before us generally has someone else presenting on his items, and he recuses himself and leaves the room.
And I agree, but that to me is more, it's not even a technical issue with me. It's more of a same thing. You still are benefiting somewhere down the road with it. I'm not challenging our city manager at all as to what he says. It's always been a concern of mine anyway, as to how we go about these items. So I'm not, please don't take exception to what I'm saying. I'm just thinking we might have started a slippery slope and that we now have to re-examine other things that we've done as a board. Having said that, that's my concern at this point. And I'll defer back to the chair.
Thank you.
Is it possible for him
Go
to
ahead.
represent? Is it possible for you to represent yourself, and therefore we might be able to move forward? I would have to ask
That's fine with me.
commissioners. And I ask that because I'm concerned that I don't want to have the community come out and represent on another date and to make themselves available.
I understand.
Madam Chair.
Does that allay your concerns, Mr. Melder?
I stated the concern. I mean, I don't, it'll be this board's decision on how it moves forward with this item. I also agree, too, that I think we need to be clear on this in all cases as well. And so, if the board feels comfortable, then I'm only one participant in it. But I think it warrants being transparent about recusals and representation. I think that just goes to this body's presentation of public trust. And
Understood. Understood. Other discussion?
I have a question.
Put speaker on, please. And your name?
I would like to know more about how this community came to the decision of these lots were going to be 100 feet, and that's what would preserve the sense of community in that neighborhood. And then it got shrunk down to 75, and now we're shrinking it down to 50, and and according to a community member, there's been problems with the 50 feet lots, and that's why they asked for the 100 feet.
All right. Mr. Clement, can you speak to that?
I will certainly do the very best I can, Madam Chairman. The standards that were reflected, if I can get back to the exhibit here. The RSF 6 development standards are very clear. They are 60-foot wide with frontage and 100 feet deep to get to the 6,000 square feet. So the 100-foot width frontage or 75 width frontage is in excess of what the standard would be for the RSF6 zoning. If it were RSF5, then 50 would be. So as we're applying these development standards for various lots and various neighborhoods, the standards are the standards. In this particular instance, the lots, because of the configuration of the existing street patterns, are in fact 133 feet deep. So that's how it gets to be greater than 6,000 square feet with a more narrow lot frontage. Does that answer your question to explain? So if they had a community plan and a preference as it related to their development standards for lot configurations, that would be a community preference. But in terms of the development standards for lots of a particular size and configuration in a zoning district, and those setbacks on those lots are the things that are controlled by the ordinance.
If I may, one of the things that I think it's really important to remember is when we went through the process of dealing with the zoning ordinance in NUZO, several of the development standards changed. And that was done in order to try to start this discussion about having lots that people would be able to develop housing on. A little bit more affordability, but still trying to keep consistent with what is in the neighborhood. So that's when the initial change happened. It's like every time either there's a change in the overall zoning ordinance, property dimensions in square footage can change. I mean, that happens every single time that there is an update. There was an asset study done for the lots in the community. There are already several lots over there that are less than what the original standards were previously. And those are things that are looked at when we deal with creating the new districts for NUZO. So I want to be real clear about this. This is something that happens every time there's a look at a neighborhood, or in this case, this was a zoning ordinance for the whole city. And this is something that took, I think, the city and the MPC probably over 10 years to do. You run into these situations with regards to different lot sizes, but you've got different lot widths in that neighborhood already. And actually 50 feet wide by new standards is actually a wide lot, because one of the things that's been very prevalent with the new development standards is that the city, we're looking at different ways to create lots that can support more affordable housing that people can purchase. So some of the lots are smaller than that. I mean, 6,500 square feet is a big lot. I mean, we're looking at lots that are 3,000 square feet that are single-family lots, just to let you know what has happened and how, that has happened. But that's kind of like where it started. And as we look at moving forward with dealing with updates of whether it's the zoning ordinance, looking at some type of neighborhood plan or development plan for the community, that's where you would address more specific concerns or desires of what you want the neighborhood to look like. So I hopefully I'm just giving you a little bit more background information about how this happened and how every year your lot or those standards might get to be a little bit different as people move forward to try to develop it.
Mr. Milder?
If I could ask the petitioner, was a variance application ever submitted?
Isn't that what we're doing now?
No, sir.
Yes.
A variance request was submitted to ZBA?
In this case, because of what it is, this is a variance request that comes to MPC because it's a variance for subdivision regulations. The ZBA does not do these types of variances. So that's why it's here.
For major subdivision?
For
MPC?
any subdivision.
Okay.
Did you want to speak?
I just want to ask, Melanie, could you repeat what the avenue is for community members to exercise their wishes for what the community looks like? It was the last sentence that you said. I just missed it.
Well, there's things that you realize with regards to how this planning process works. You have a comprehensive plan, and then hopefully you would have some type of neighborhood plan or community development plan or an area plan, which gets into the micro or more detail about what you want your community in that area to look like. That is where you go into more detail about, I'd like to have a park. I'd like to have commercial be in this area. I would like to have these things. That is not something that MPC does. That is something normally that the city basically embarks on through the community development department. We would provide assistance to them if they make that request, but that is not something that we lead out with and start with. So the city manager's here, and I'm sure that he and their staff, if there's a request in your elected officials, would be glad to probably start that for an area. But the area plan is where you get into a little bit more detail about what you want to have your neighborhood look like. We deal with the bigger pieces, which is the comp plan, and we work with the zoning ordinance, because the zoning ordinance is the implementing tool for those area plans and the comprehensive plan.
So we don't know where this community plan came from, or do we?
No, it would have come from the city of Savannah. That's what I'm saying. It's
Okay.
something that the city of Savannah does. It's not something that we do.
Yeah, I think the issue,
Just a minute.
I have one question, and I won't say anything else. I have been contacted.
Come up to the mic, please,
I have been
and
contacted
state your
by-
name again.
Okay, excuse me. I apologize. Pamela Anderson, President of the Woodville Community. I was contacted by Mr. Travis Coles. He wanted to come and speak at our community meeting, which is tomorrow. Okay, if I saw his name over there when I came in, didn't say anything, I know that's a conflict of interest, okay? But we are going to allow him to come to speak to the people in the community, because our meeting is tomorrow at 6 o'clock. I can't deny him that. But there is a conflict of interest. You need to look at it, understand it, and see it. We're not just here arguing about something that came into existence today,
Thank you.
okay?
Go ahead, Mr. Milder.
yes, I think getting back to the petition itself, I think there's just a question, and these are things that I think we just need to be able to address between the city and MPC going forward in terms of interpretation. The community plan developed for Woodville would have followed the current zoning. And then if there was a variance request, there's an evaluation criteria for those variance requests done through the ZBA. And any variance granted would not be injurious to that community, not saying that any variance request would be denied or that this variance request would be denied. It might be likely that it would be granted. But that would be the process. So I think just making sure that, and it could be the case, that in this process, MPC's evaluation for the variance would be the same as the ZBA's evaluation criteria for the variance. But I think that's what our neighborhood president from Woodville is kind of speaking to on that impact to the community plan and the injurious nature of any variance to the community.
Mr. Manager, if I may. These applications are taken by the city and referred here. They are teed up for staff evaluation here. The reason that this is here, again, is because it primarily involves the subdivision, even though a minor one, and it does create new nonconformities. The Board of Zoning Appeals deal with existing conformities, but because we're creating new ones and applying a different yardstick to the decision that this body will make, that's how the city saw it, that's how it got here.
Okay, I'm not sure that's how the city saw it, but I totally agree with your assessment of the process. So,
All right. It sounds like there's a lot of indecision about this project and where to go. And I think that it's probably in everyone's best interest to at least consider tabling it or continuing it until the next meeting. And I'm open for a motion.
Madam Chair, Joe Irvin, motion to continue this matter until and I will not say next meeting, the following meeting, simply because we need to have some discussions internal about conflicts of interest. And we need to have some internal conversations about how we handle these matters going forward, and a comprehensive plan looking backward as to what we've done before. So my motion is to table this. When is the next, not the next meeting, but the meeting following that?
One minute.
September 24th?
Well, no. Oh, did you say 2 meetings or 1?
We want to skip one meeting. then
Skip
to
the 1
next
meeting and then the next one.
Urban motion to continue this matter to our September 24th meeting.
Bowles, second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Milder?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Plunk?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
I too say yes, and I'd really like to see not only the MPC, but the city be involved in that discussion. Thank you. All right, our next item is a subdivision with variance at 913 and 915 East Waldberg, 24-003973-ZA.
Commissioners, Brad Clement from Development Services. This is similar to the last case you just heard, but different in other ways. This is a subdivision, a minor subdivision that will again create non-conformities. This particular lot is across the street from the W.W. Law Community Center on Waldberg. It is in the east side neighborhood of Savannah, if that puts you where we are here. The petitioner is asking, this is the existing two-family home located at that address, is asking to subdivide this lot, which would be otherwise conforming in the TR2 district, except for this residential use, which would require a larger lot. This structure was built in 1900. It has been there, it has continuously operated, and it was the intent of the petitioner that it would continue to do so, but on that non-conforming lot. So there are actually 2 items tied to this petition different than the previous petition, because the first request is to perform the subdivision creating those non-conformities, but unlike the previous church use, this two-family home will continue to operate in that manner, so it's also a non-conforming use based on the subdivision of the lot that we did in this action. The petitioner is requesting to create a single-family lot adjacent to this property where he intends to build a single-family home and deed restrict it to affordable housing. We have not done this a lot, so this is my first experience and looking at how this goes. So this has very many of the same characteristics as a previous case. There will be a resultant recorded plat per this action, and all of the strictures that we apply through conditions and all of the things and decisions and determinations made by this commission will be attached as a rider to that plat. And again, the subdivision itself creates nonconformity in the existing two-family dwelling unit. The then vacant lot proposed for single-family development would otherwise be conforming in terms of size, area, and setbacks for the construction of a single-family home, which has been proposed and earmarked for affordable housing. The first request is that we approve the nonconformity as it relates to the subdivision of the property, and because that property will continue to operate in its existing configuration, it would now be a non-conforming use based on that subdivision. So for all of the things that we've just discussed, that is why it is before this body. Otherwise, this and the previous case would have been a run-of-the-mill minor subdivision, which would have typically been handled at the staff level.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant here?
Good afternoon, Commission. Ben Summerlin, on behalf of Kelvin Davis and his wife Tanya, the property owners of 913 and 915 East Waldberg. I had a whole packet that I was going to pass around. I'm not very tech savvy, but after hearing staff's presentation, we agree on almost everything. The only condition that we're worried about is this affordability. So I really only have to pass around one exhibit, and I would, if that's okay, if I could pass this around. I guess I can start from this side. So what's being passed around is the 1939 subdivision map for the Kelly Ward. And as Mr. Clement mentioned, this existing structure has been there since 1900. And I've circled it. You can tell that I'm great with technology because I circled it in pen and then made some copies of it. But the circled lots C and D are what we're looking at. And the only thing we're asking is, can we put those back? That's how they were in 1900 when this structure was built. And it's, as Mr. Clement said, otherwise perfectly fine to fit what it is that we're proposing to put on that structure. And the only problem we have with affordability, number one, is that I don't quite know what it means. If we're talking about affordable to me, that's going to be tough. But I think we're leaving this up to, I believe it's the City Council, to come up with this policy afterwards. And that's a big if. And I think the whole goal here is to get affordable housing in that area. Well, Mr. Davis is ready to get housing in that area. And one of the ways to make housing affordable, I suppose, is to have a restrictive covenant that's 10 years, 20 years, or however long. But another way is to just put more houses over there. And that's what Mr. Davis is asking this commission to allow him to do. So I would open myself up to questions.
All right, thank you. Anyone have questions for the applicant or for staff?
Yeah, I have some questions for staff. And I may have walked in a little bit late to the pre-meeting, so apologies, this was kind of addressed in there. But to the applicant's point, the third condition, we're essentially asking, we're putting a condition that they abide by a standard that does not exist yet, right? We're saying that the city is going to create a standard and they have to abide, but we don't know what that standard is yet. Is that correct? Can we as a board hold someone to something that does not yet exist?
No, you cannot, nor even if it did exist, would it fall to this body to do the enforcement. There is no enforcement mechanism available to this body. It would become a city structure that we are applying on behalf of the city to support the configuration of these proposed lots.
The other thing too, and the reason that this was actually added, to be all candid, is that the applicant, when they came in, they spent a lot of time talking about this being an affordable housing lot. The city, and Mr. Miller can speak to this, is in the process of developing an affordable housing policy, which they'll probably have out fairly soon. And we wanted to make sure that at least if he's having that conversation and saying that is the reason why he wanted to do this, that it gives the city the opportunity to make sure that it's an affordable housing unit. We're at the point now where it's a chicken and an egg. We've got a lot of people that come in and they say they want to do affordable housing, and they say they want to do stuff in affordability, and then they either don't because nobody's mentioning it. If the city decides to do nothing, then basically, this basically is the city has no, the city has decided that they're not going to enforce or have affordable housing policy, and then that way it could go away. But I don't think that's the case. I know they're very serious about trying to put something in place with regards to this issue. But this condition is something that is up to you. You can either keep it or you can remove it, but we added it because of the number of conversations that the applicant had with their wishes to make sure that this was an affordable house.
Yeah, it's absolutely an understandable condition. I was just confused as to maybe, whether we could apply something before the city formally introduces it. Yeah, go ahead.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
We discussed affordable housing, but we didn't bring it up. I think there were several questions lodged to me about how Mr. Davis has conducted himself over the last 40 years. I mean, he's been, talking about affordable housing, I think he's been doing it since you were 24? 38. So, I mean, he's been doing that for a while, but the affordable housing was not brought up by us, it was brought up to us. We have, staff has been great, by the way. They've worked well with me, which I don't think is, if you ask my wife, is not easy. But we've a little bit butted heads over the affordability issue. It was not brought up by us, but, again, we open ourselves back up.
Yeah, thank you. Does the city manager have any additional comment on that? Since they're waiting on a decision by the city that this would be held to?
So this is not a condition that the city requested to be added. However, I think the goals of it are, of course, noble and in line with city council vision and what the city wants to see. I did have a discussion after reading the conditions before the meeting started today with some members of staff and the chairwoman about making sure that we get these housing density bonuses, these requirements into our ordinances as quickly as possible, and the city has a big part to play in that, and MPC is working with us graciously on that, and we've got to redouble our efforts to get that out. And so I understand the petitioner's, concern about that condition, which doesn't really have a definition behind it. And so I understand that concern, and I'm worried about our ability to enforce that condition when there isn't a programmatic regime yet established to support it, though that is coming and it needs to come. I do agree that we need affordable housing, and I applaud MPC working to try to put that into every angle, but I think that there's a process that we have to make sure exists so that when people are trying to do business and trying to develop housing, that there's a clear standard by which they know they're going to go about doing it versus conditions that may or may not have any backing in the ordinance currently.
Right.
So that's kind of, I know I'm walking on both edges. I want to see affordable housing. I want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help those people who build houses know exactly what the standards are going to be before they start down the road.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, my only concern is just voting on a standard when I don't know the standard yet.
Understood. Mr. Stevens, did you have anything you wanted to add? All right. Ms. Amick?
I have a real problem with anything moving forward regarding affordable housing being approved when we don't, just what we've been talking about. I think that builders and developers are using that as a buzzword now to get projects passed in a variety of ways. And while we may need it, I don't know that there's any guarantee we're going to get it until it's defined. And I personally don't plan on voting for anything that is based on affordable housing.
All right. So, go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
This is a question for staff. The current setback for that area is what?
And the TR2 for a single-family home? I would have to look to see if there are contributing buildings on that block because it changes. It becomes an average of those. And I'm sorry, for that house on that lot? 3 feet.
3 feet, yeah, that's one of the conditions.
Yeah, no, I see the condition, but I'm just trying to, if we often base some of our decisions off of contextual things. We often base our decisions off of the zoning types, and I'm just trying to get a clear understanding and make sure that I'm aware of what the actual setback is and making sure that we are not offering up a setback that is less than, because you did say this would be going to a non-conforming use, correct? I mean, a non-conforming configuration, if you will.
Right, and so that 3 feet does not speak to the setback. It has to do with the building separation and the orientation configuration of the lot that we're creating. Right now, there is no lot line, so the setback is what's existed there since 1900. So that particular condition and that 3 feet has to do with maintaining building separation on proposed construction going forward.
So I guess with that being said, had this been built out for the maximum footprint that it could be built out on the current size of the lot, that's what I'm trying to understand, what the setback would have been if it were built out to the maximum for the lot. Because I know you got 5 feet, I know you got 10-foot side yard, or some of the, just understanding what that looks like, because a 3-foot separation, for me, coming from the building industry, I understand that it's going to start to get a little bit more difficult to make it affordable. I understand the conversation from affordability. We don't have a mechanism to currently define what that is and or regulate that, if you will, or enforce it. But I know for a fact that the affordability starts to become a wash, because you now have to, if you have a setback separation that small, it's going to have a firewall, and that whole side, the expense of that is going to skyrocket. So this concern for creating the density and efforts to have some level of affordability starts to become a wash, and the affordability starts to flee.
I do not disagree with you, Mr. Commissioner, but in the TR2 district, as it goes to lot coverage and setbacks, there are multiple residential use types that could be applied to that lot. It's difficult to go through the what configuration, what if I were going to max out the lot today, what would that look like?
I follow you. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
So, go ahead.
Oh, if I may, the other thing, if you look at the report, you'll see that on August the 25th of 2022, that the Board of Zoning Appeals granted a variance to look at the minimum lot width. And they were dealing with non-conforming parcels. So it left the existing duplex at 3,795 or 4,500 was required, and that was done on the adjoining property owner, adjoining properties. And I'm looking for the address. That was done at 921 East Walberg Street. So a precedent actually was set for dealing with the lot size with regards to previous actions that took place then. So I wanted to make sure that you were looking at number 6 with regards to what happened back then and why we moved forward with this. And there's also the whole question with regards to looking at what can happen on a non-conforming lot. This is something that's already existing. It's not something that's new. If it were something that was new, they probably couldn't build what is there right now. So that's kind of where these get to be really tricky. That's why you don't see them all the time. I think that, once we've got some tweaks that really need to be made to the ordinance with regards to subdivision, we'll probably be able to more clearly address this. But when we look at making these recommendations and everything, we look at all decisions that were previously made. And I just want to reiterate that the third condition about affordability, that is something you can keep or not keep. It is something that the applicant did discuss with us. That's why we put it in there. But you do not have to keep it. As was previously stated by one of the board members, a lot of people come in and they talk to us about, I want to do affordability, and they say a lot, but nothing's ever added to at least keep that discussion on the forefront as they move forward with the development process. So that's one of the reasons that that condition was added, but you don't have to keep it. So I want to be very clear with that, but just look at what has happened previously. Thank you.
All right, go ahead. Are you ready for a motion? All right. I just want to try and make sure that we have some clarity around where we are with this and why we're here. And it sounds to me like the reason we're here is because ZBA approved a subdivision in the past, whether they should have or not, where there was a duplex that was being put on a substandard lot, and they split the lot so that another property could be built. And our applicant saw his neighbor do that and came in and said, why can't I do that? So that's kind of how we got here. Okay.
Did we ask for public comment yet?
I don't think we did. And I don't have any cards. Is there anyone online? Okay. All right. So there is no public comment on this one.
I make a motion that we accept staff recommendation except for condition 3.
Plunk second.
All right. I have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion of that motion? Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Plump?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
All right, I too will say yes. It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item is a general development plan with the variance at 4307 Bull Street, 4219 Bull Street, 20 West 60th Street, 20 West 58th Street, 24-003617-ZA.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the members of the board. I'm Subhashi Karunaratne, presenting the staff findings and recommendation. You skipped.
Wait a minute.
I
I'm sorry.
apologize, Madam Chair, you skipped an item. There were two items
that, didn't
with that
we?
913. They have to be
And they
voted
have already
separately.
left. Can we stop them? I think it's kind of a... My apologies.
Thank you.
All right, my apologies. We did have two on that item. The first one was the subdivision, and the second one is the subdivision with variances within TR2 zoning, Kelly Ward, 913, 915 East Waldberg Street, 24-003925 (P). Sorry, Brad.
So what I was explaining both at the same time, and this is like when we do a Flume amendment, if you're not going to do the first part, the second part doesn't exist. The first is the subdivision that creates the lot. The next is the action that would approve the use continuing on the non-conforming lot that you just created. So I accepted that you meant to do both based on your comment, but
But
per
we do have two
procedure,
separate-
you should bang the hammer twice.
Yeah. All right. Would the applicant like to say anything?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, do I have any questions for staff or for the applicant? And no public comment here. Do I have a motion?
Motion to grant staff recommendation with condition 1 and 2 only.
All right, thank you.
Full second.
All right. Ms. Amick? Oh.
We'll be right back.
Okay. Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Evans left too, hadn't he? Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Milder?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Plunk?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Ms. Amick?
Yes.
I too say yes. All right. Motion passes. Thank you. I think we're done now. All right, now we'll go on to the general development plan with variances at 4307 Bull, et cetera, et cetera.
So again, Subhashi Karunaratne presenting the staff report. This site also has 2 agenda items, and I'm going to present them together, but they needed to be voted separately, just like we did now. So here at the site, we have 4 parcels, 2 facing the Bull Street and 1 facing West 60th Street and the other West 59th Street. In item number 13 of the agenda, the petitioner requests a GDP with a variance to the maximum allowed number of floors and height. The parcels are in TC1 district, and in TC1 district, the standard is to allow a maximum of 3 stories and 45 feet in height. The petitioner is requesting an increase up to 4 stories and maximum height of 50 feet for the 3 buildings fronting Bull Street as they are proposed. In item number 14 of the agenda, the petitioner is requesting a special exception to the maximum footprint of 5,500 square feet. Again, in TC1 district, the petitioner is requesting a footprint of approximately 9,000 square feet. The subject parcels consist a total of 1.42 acres and contain structures and open storage areas formerly used in association with Dice Service Center and automobile salvage and repair business. At present, the site has been cleared of vehicles. The subject parcels are currently zoned TC1, as I mentioned, which allows the commercial-oriented mixed-use development. The property currently identified as 20 West 60th Street, right here, was previously requested to be rezoned to develop apartments. Previously, it was residential 2-family, but it was converted as a TC1. Conditions to the rezoning tie several of the subject parcels to the conceptual site plan previously approved. The site plan under review is intended to supersede the prior approval. Here is the site plan, and the site plan under consideration was developed in support of the requested height variance and special exception. The present review does not constitute a final approval, as submission and approval of a specific development plan by all relevant planning reviewing departments of the City of Savannah is required for issuance of a site development permit. The previous development plan approved by MPC last year consists of 63 proposed dwellings and received a significant adverse comment at CDSPR on August 3rd, 2023. As planned currently, the development will include 85 residences, approximately of 14,430 square feet of ground floor, retail, and other non-residential spaces permitted under the TC1 zoning district. The proposed number of units is well within the maximum allowed for the area. Parking will be provided through a combination of surface parking and underground garage. At this time, a variance for required off-street parking is not anticipated, although the specific mix of commercial uses and tenants has not been finalized. To make sure the project fits well within the surrounding area, the petitioner has increased the building height only along Bull Street and stepped it down as the buildings move towards the neighborhood. And that's what you're seeing here in this picture, 4 stories reducing down to 2 and 3. The added height along Bull Street is appropriate here since the development is replacing older commercial and light industrial uses. Plus, Bull Street is an arterial with more than 8,000 daily trips according to GDOT. The developer has committed to the provision of economically affordable dwelling units within the project. As proposed, the increased height of the 5 specific structures identified will permit an additional 18 dwelling units that would not be possible with the 3-story limitation. Additionally, the 5-foot height variance is requested to permit a pitched roof rather than a flat roof, which is more consistent with the neighborhood character. If permitted, a 4th story could be achieved within the permitted 45-foot height limit, but this would necessitate lowering the ceiling height and a flat roof. Variances are requested to make the project more compatible with the surroundings. With that, the MPC staff is recommending approval of the following requests. Number 1 for item number 13, a variance to construct 3 buildings containing 4 stories up to a maximum of 50 feet in height in accordance with the submitted general development plan. And for item number 14, a special exception to construct 1 building with a footprint of up to 9,000 square feet in accordance with the submitted general development plan. And the approval recommendations follow conditions. 1, the proposed residential component of the development to be constructed shall be affordable within the scope and the meaning of policies established by the City of Savannah. A signed covenant shall be submitted to the MPC Development Service staff prior to the plat approval by the Executive Director and the CEO of the MPC, and a revised traffic study to be submitted. Thank you. With that, I'm ending the staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is the applicant available? Can we wait and hold questions until we get both the applicant and the staff? Yes, I have questions for staff as well. State your name for the record, please.
Jerome Elder with J. Elder Studio.
Mr.
Elder.
Mr. Yellen, would you like to, are you weighing in or are you just standing and helping?
He'll
helping for now.
Yes.
He's a good helper.
Sure. Shows up for everyone correctly? Yes. Well, good afternoon, Chairwoman, and everyone else on the board. I am excited to be here today to present this project and this site plan. My team and I have been working with the MPC, working with the developer, and also working through meeting with the various community representatives, organizations, and just interested parties on this project. For us, what we are hoping to achieve is a new node for this neighborhood. The one thing that this developer identified, so there's a new developer, as was mentioned before, there was a previous submission that was approved, and subject to an SDP, which essentially we would be as well, if approved. That particular petition and site plan presented a plan which was mixed use. It did have some commercial. However, there are really large surface parking lots. And when the new potential owner, so the developer that we're working with, who's local, approached us with this project, they said, I am hoping that you can make this become like Havisham Village is to that neighborhood to here for Filer Park. So it became and was named Filer Place. As we started exploring what could be done with this site, we realized that we had the opportunity to put some of the parking below ground because of the elevation as well. And in order to do that, what we did was develop a site plan that allowed for circulation all through the site. So here you can see we focused the development on creating walkable and active ground floor areas with various plazas. What isn't showing well here is that this is going to be hardscape mixed in with greenscape, but we're planning to be working through and really creating that type of small neighborhood node shopping and eating area. We created various sizes of units for commercial spaces because in exploring it, we realized that what was needed for commercial areas that we wanted to introduce as a new way of looking at mixed-use development is not just having these, when you do the building, you just do an equal division of 1,500 square foot to 3,000 square foot units. What we looked at is what can we do that can be a unit for someone who wants to be a startup. So starting from as small as 500 square feet, and well, if there's a way for me to zoom in, let's see, I may have to do it this way. This is where I'm not good. Control plus, maybe? There we go. And go up one page. So it may be a little difficult to see on the screen, but you can see that we have a variety of commercial spaces that's bringing in those who will be using the commercial spaces into the site, and they can circulate in and around and then get back onto Bull Street. In doing so, we realized that this created a much more pleasing environment for the mixed-use development, and from there, we started to look at what we can get for our units, because at the same time, with it being a mixed-use residential, we need to make sure that we were able to get a good unit mix. And the developer is committed to implementing and bringing in affordable workforce housing. And I know there's a lot of questions about that. Our range for what we're looking at based on the AMI is from 60 to 80% AMI. And I think there were some questions about definitions. And just so you know, there are affordability requirements that are listed on Savannah's government website. And with that, it takes you to the land bank, and the land bank takes you further on into identifying what they consider the requirements for it. And for someone to meet it, 80% AMI is the high threshold. So we're working between the 60 and 80. Hope that answered that question. So as we were developing it, Bull Street being a commercial corridor and one that we wanted to see more activated, we initially had five actually, four-story buildings. And in some of our early meetings with the neighborhood and various interested parties, what we heard was, we'd like you to reduce the height, especially as you're going toward the neighborhood. So we took that into consideration and went with only the buildings that are along Bull Street. Those are the only ones that we have at 4 stories. And I'll go back to full screen again. So we have a setback, and now we have setbacks in all three buildings, so that the fourth story is not as, at least from a human perspective when you're on the sidewalk, it's not as visible. And you'll see that a little later on in the presentation. We then went down to 3 stories and then down to 2 as we were getting further into the neighborhood. As we were looking at it, these are the types of inspiration images that we looked at, where we want to have those plazas, have that connectivity to the neighborhood, make it a place where people can go to and enjoy all throughout the day. Really start reactivating that part of the neighborhood, and in turn also hopefully help with reactivating the park that's right there across the street. We see this as really becoming Filer Place, a node, a neighborhood center. And what we are hoping for is continuous working with the community for identifying what additional needs they may have. Some of what we got as feedback as well, though, was that the buildings definitely will be large in comparison to the remaining neighborhood. Because there are many to the west of Bull Street, many 1- and 2-story single-family homes and duplexes. And we understand that, so what we've tried to do is break down our massing some more to lessen that impact. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the design is one that is giving a positive impact and is thoughtful in its approach. It's not just a block with windows. So you can see here, this is one perspective that we have, and this would be 60th Street. We haven't modeled the rest of the street, but this is the 1-story building that we're saving and rehabilitating, and it will go back to being a single-family home. So quite honestly, the development, because we didn't include that in our development number, we will also have a 3-bedroom, additional 3-bedroom home that will be part of the development that will be rented. As you can see, from the street, you really see an expression that's more so 3 stories. The 4th story is set back and really is not that visible from the street until you start going further away. So that's one thing that I wanted to make sure was shown. And then we're also trying to create various massing and roof lines so that it doesn't just feel like that large monolithic building. If I were to get this rendered, you'll get a better sense, especially when you start seeing light casting, because there's a 22-foot wide space here between these buildings and 30 feet here. And we're hoping that, like in the image before, this is actually only about 15, so ours is almost twice as wide as the space that's shown in this image. But it's really about creating a place and a plaza, letting people be able to enjoy and live, eat, play. It's something that you hear people say all the time. And that's what we're hoping this can provide. I think outside of that, the one reason that we did need to increase the footprint is when we did reduce the heights of the building. We needed, in order to make it more feasible of a structure because of the cost of construction, we opted to extend this building, and this is the one that we're asking for that. And I can show you it here. It's this building here that we are asking for that 9,000 square foot footprint. I think that's all I have, unless you have questions.
I think we do have some questions. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Just want to make sure I'm tallying up things properly. So you're looking at 14 commercial units and 85 residential units.
Correct.
Correct. And looking to park 113 vehicles. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any idea of what types of commercial it would be?
We've been looking into having things like small bookstores, or there may be an office or two, spaces that can be offices within it. Maybe one or two food and beverage, so basically a coffee shop or cafe, and just little things like that.
Gotcha.
We're looking for smaller, more neighborhood-oriented.
Okay. Because I just have, the reason I was asking and just wanted to make sure I was clear on the numbers is primarily, first off, let me preface it and say I am absolutely pro-development, especially with our community evolving, if you will. I do have some concerns from the density standpoint. It's a tough situation because I know density is how we achieve some of the affordability, but being very strategic and careful where that density occurs is of the utmost importance. My biggest concern is due to the fact that Bull Street is as busy as it is already, due to the fact that there is currently a pretty sizable apartment complex that's not even a mile away, that the now narrow streets throughout the neighborhood is going to start to become the paths of travel.
Understand.
Which my big concern now is for the residents that currently live there that have for a very long time been underserved and will now have a more impactful, potentially a more impactful, more impact on their, adverse impact on their quality of life. There are no sidewalks. There's a park around the corner that is actually pretty regularly used. So again, it's not to beat up on the project. I think it is a thoughtful project. I do appreciate the considerations to start stepping down and fit back into the context. Even at 4 stories, I feel it's still a little tall, but it might actually work in this particular location. So I don't have a ton of heartburn about it, but I do have a little reservation. But my biggest concern is that traffic in and through that community, because the number streets are absolutely going to become people's thoroughfares to Montgomery to try to go north and south. So, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on the numbers and still kind of present some of the concerns that I do have for you all to be able to take into consideration as you progress. And then if I have anything else, I'll chime in.
It's definitely something that we've been looking into and considering, and it has been one of the major concerns across the board. I mean, it's a concern for us, and what we've tried to do is have a few different access points, and this is all based on us looking at the previous traffic study, which at that point, it said that no additional changes needed to be made. But for us, we still think that we'll continue to have these conversations with traffic and engineering. It's part of the process, and as we develop it further, and also one of the good things that we do have is that Columbus Drive is right there. So we do have access points to not just Montgomery, but also Abercorn. And we are hoping that as we're developing it, and working with traffic and engineering, that it'll help us ensure that the way that we direct traffic flow in and out of the site will be one that will help give the least amount of impact to that system. Because yes, every new development is going to continue to add pressures. And the large development that's near Duren, with it just exiting completely onto Bull Street with all those units, is definitely going to. Yes, it's a bit away when you look at, in terms of Bull Street, their Bull Street exit and any Bull Street exit that we may have, but it's still something that will create congestion on that lower portion at times. And that's why we also tried to create multiple exit points to try and help ease the congestion coming out of one point of the site. So we actually have, I think it's 4 or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, very thoughtful. I don't argue that. I think it's just going to be challenging.
It will be.
And it's going to be particularly challenging. I do hear you in regards to Columbus Street becoming an access to Abercorn, but I assure you nobody's going to cross Bull Street. They're going to minimize crossing Bull Street unless that becomes a traffic light. because Bull Street is just too busy. And so I just want to be able to voice my concerns, which I'm certain echo a lot of what the community has to say, and just kind of figure out what is going to be the best approach to allow for development, because I would hate for that site to sit neglected. And I would love to see that community get some more resources they can actually walk to within those commercial spaces, because it is long overdue, but it's got to be very thoughtful, and you guys are heading down the right path of being thoughtful, but I have a couple of concerns that I'm sure could potentially get worked out.
Great.
All right, other questions? I have a couple of questions. First, I think most of mine are for staff, actually.
Okay.
What does the original flume show for this neighborhood?
So originally, this parcel.
Was it traditional commercial or business neighborhood?
I need to pull out the report if you give me a minute.
I think it was changed to TC.
Yes, it was residential, suburban, single family.
Wow. That was the future land use originally, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My understanding was that it was business neighborhood, but even at that, I know that there are concerns. I share Mr. Stevens' concerns about the Bull Street corridor in particular. As far as this being a general development plan, this is kind of our last shot at it, right? And when we have a general development plan, shouldn't we have city reviews for that general development plan?
If I may, this isn't the last shot you get at this, and I think the applicant can speak a little bit more to this, but no, it's not your last shot at looking at this.
Sorry, Josh Yellen here today on behalf of the applicant, and so this is an amendment to the general development plan. That general development plan would still have to turn into a specific development plan and go through all of city staff review along with MPC review. And if it deviated from what we were presenting today, then it would have to come back before you. And that was the condition, and I'm glad that this is pulled up if y'all give me a few minutes. I do just want to be very clear that this site is not vacant right now. This site, as Pat is being shown, was approved for 65 units with far less parking, and someone could build that by right today. That was approved by city council.
Understood.
By a vote of 9-0.
Understood.
Today's petition actually reduces the bedroom count from that. If we're concerned about traffic, we are coming in with less bedrooms than what's.
But more units.
More units,
And commercial.
less bedrooms, but more parking as well.
Okay.
And so, and if this is the last shot, I can agree with you on that point, but what's currently approved, in my opinion, is not the best project for the neighborhood. It can be improved upon, and that's why we're here today, because we're trying to take a good project and make it better.
Okay.
Sorry for taking that up. I know I filled out the comment cards.
Well, maybe you need to stay there for just a moment longer.
Yes, ma'am. I'll stand. So just
There was, I saw the sheet that said workforce housing, am I 80% to 60% or 60% to 80%? And you broke it down, is that part of this is what we're gonna do?
Yes,
And if we
that
don't
is.
do this, then you can pull our permits.
Yes, the developer is committing to that.
There were 12 units, I believe.
Yes, the 12 units.
And you
that
break it down
Correct.
in bedroom
Correct.
allotments, okay.
And I will say, that was in response to feedback that was heard, that please don't dedicate all the studios only for affordable housing. Please add some mix of bedrooms so there can be affordable housing.
Because many of the affordable
Exactly.
housing needs are needs of families, yes.
Agreed. And also one of the other things that they said is don't just make it the smallest unit of all time. And that's what we made sure to try. And I think across the board for the entire project, we got a pretty, we're larger in footprint than most of the, actually I would say all, but I don't know what all the multifamilies that have recently been built are, but then the majority that have come forward.
Right.
Okay.
To be clear, the maximum density for this site, if a developer were to come in, max it out, do subsurface parking, is 142 units. We're coming in the 80s. The average unit size here, the city lets you go down to 435 square feet per unit. The average unit size that we're proposing is 837 square feet, and the 3-bedroom units are over 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
These are large units.
They're 1,300 and so, and then the 1-bedrooms are all 1,050 plus.
Right.
Okay.
And the studios
All
are
right.
double the minimum.
One more question, not related to the bedrooms or AMI. Is this a dirty site? Does it need to be cleaned up?
The site has had various levels of environmental remediation done, and as of now, until the existing building has to be removed, the site has been deemed clear.
I'm sorry?
The site has been deemed clear. So it was on the brownfield program, and the work, at least what we have been given by the current building owner, is that the work has been completed, and we've gotten that confirmed with our engineers.
And a great deal of the development, the parking is going to be subsurface parking?
Yes, on one portion of the site. So
Okay.
we'll also be automatically removing a lot of any contaminated soils.
Right, and y'all might remember it from when it was
Yes.
the actual auto
I
body
drive by it every day.
with
almost.
the salvage yards in the back.
Yeah.
And so there was work to be done to obviously clean up some of that soil.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think that you've answered my questions. Any more questions? All right. I do have a number of speakers. We have more speakers than 2 minutes would allow, but I'm going to give everyone 2 minutes. And I'm going to start with our online callers because I don't have any, we usually ask if you're in favor of it or opposed to it, and our online people haven't really shown a preference. So I'm going to start with Khalees Hughes. I hope I got that right. Are you there, Ms. Hughes, or Mr. Hughes?
The attendee has been unmuted on both the ends. Can you hear us?
Mr. Hughes? Are you there? Can you hear us? And if you're self-muted, please unmute. All right, we'll come back to you in a minute. Reverend Jones, are you there? Betty Jones?
Can you hear me?
Yes, can.
Good afternoon to the chairperson and the board of MPC. I'm coming, haven't totally made up my mind, but have a lot of concerns. And some of the concerns that we have already been stated by members of commissioners. And because 4 stories, and Mr. Eldon has met with us, and our theme has always been with him we do not need 4 stories in our neighborhood. Because that will set a precedence down Broad Street and in the neighborhoods. Because we have, as has been stated, concerning the development on Bull and Duran, another development that will be soon down by Victory Drive, which will also have an impact with traffic. We also have the Fairground project. I'm not sure when that will start, but we also have the fairground that will be developed with housing.
You got 1 more minute.
And right now, we have, most of the apartments that we have in our neighborhood are 2 or 3 stories. So we do not need, and I know I have a short time, but we do not want 4 stories, and Mr. Elder is aware of that because he has been gracious, he and his team, to meet with us and to hear our concerns. The impact, the density, the travel, the traffic, the parking, all of that, because even with it being next to some of the residential housing, everyone does not have off-street parking, which means when someone is visiting or they're having an affair, they can really be parking in front of a neighbor's house, wherein that means that neighbor will be displaced and may have to park way in the 600 block or the 500 block, 6 feet to go down.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Thank you. I appreciate your input. All right, is Mr. and Ms. Hughes there, Kelly's Hughes? They still muted?
I got a text from Kelly's Hughes. I tried to respond, but I'm not sure what is going on with my mic, so there's a technical issue.
Okay,
on
we'll
their
go
end.
on to Chase Rosen, and maybe you can help her out. Chase Rosen, are you available?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Andrew Chase Rosen. I want to support this petition. I do wish there was more bike parking and a little less vehicle parking because many of my friends don't even have a car or have 1 car for a young couple. Some of them and other residents that would most benefit from the affordable housing can't even afford a car. But it is an urbanist and pedestrian-friendly development that provides housing and can support local businesses, and I support that. I also support the first condition, as gentrification is a serious concern in this area, and the state of Georgia limits municipalities' right to implement rent controls otherwise. But I think the second condition should be limited, as traffic studies are crude tools, no more than educated guesses. To quote the experienced traffic engineer, traffic safety advocate, author, president of the advocacy nonprofit Strong Towns, Charles Moreau, says, all traffic models are wrong. You've had traffic engineers stand before you and tell you that their traffic studies were complete guesses, that they don't know what the exact commercial uses are going to be or even who's going to be there. They can't tell you if it's going to be a Chick-fil-A or a local kitchen. You know what I mean? So why do we pretend like they hold any value? I don't think that it's worth anyone's time or money to require a bogus study. The petitioner should not be required to submit a revised study, and the MPC and the city should really rethink any policies that might require pseudo-scientific studies. But again, I support this petition.
Thank you. All right, can we get Ms. Hughes or Mr. Hughes on the line now?
We do have got a comment from Kelly's Hughes. It goes, I would like if the MPC would deny this request because it would impede the quality of life in the neighborhoods. That sounds this location.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Artis Woods?
Artis Wood, Chair of Scenic Chatham. Before you start the clock, I just want to ask one question. Is this the final, once the footprint is accepted here, is that it, or
It will be coming back to us, and I think it'll come back to us after the city reviews it, and the city may make changes,
Okay.
They may figure out that they can't fit everything in.
Yeah,
So-
thank you. I like the fact that you have different heights, and I think that's an interesting thing, although I would reverse that. I think that the fourth story at the street level is too overwhelming to what's right across the street, which is 1- and 2-story buildings and single-family homes. So if you could reverse that, have a look at that. And I'm glad somebody said there's questions when you have traffic studies. Again, we talked about this at City Council, that we don't want to nick away at medians. Those are linear parks, and you're talking about using Columbus Avenue. And we don't want any change on that. So be careful when traffic studies come that they say you have to remove or you have to have acceleration lanes and deceleration. You want a straight frame, and that's a very important word, frame or border. It means that you've got what we love in Savannah, a curb, a tree lawn, and a sidewalk. And I don't know how far back you are going to be set, but your building adjacent on that street is that late night air, and that's set back. So I hope you're going to be that far back so you could have a good wide tree lawn and trees. The opposite of that is this horrid complex, which is a wall of buildings on Victory Drive that the SCAD folks were allowed to put up so close that there's no room for a tree lawn, and it's just that it has a bad feeling. So that's what I want to say. Let me pass out my card, and what we talk about in a little video I have, which you can look at, is the border. On the streets where we live is where we decide, do we like our place or not? Is it beautiful or it isn't? So make sure we have a border.
Can you give those to Ms. Helm, and she can pass them out to us
Yes.
later? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Isaacs?
Ellie Isaacs, Director of Preservation for Historic Savannah Foundation. HSF is in support of several aspects of this project. We appreciate the much-needed housing and workforce housing. We are appreciative of the retention of the historic single-family home on West 60th Street and the step-down aspects in regard to the height of the proposed buildings. However, we want to recognize that we feel it will be a loss and a missed opportunity to not rehabilitate and add stories, and potentially add stories on top of the Dias service station. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Combs?
Hello, Jason Combs. I'm here for YIMBY Savannah, but I'm also the president of Thomas Square neighborhood. I've got this letter here from YIMBY to Savannah that I planned on reading into the record, but I think it's already been sent to you, so I want to editorialize a little bit on the affordability and the auto stuff. We've all got car brain in here, including me. We got to start thinking beyond cars. Not everyone living at this is going to be driving a car every day, and I can say that for a fact because I rode my bike here from Starland. And e-bikes are a game changer. I got here faster than driving my truck without breaking a sweat. If these units go to the people they're intended for, I will make a bet to anyone in this room that once it's full, at least 20 people will be using a bike as their main mode of transportation to come downtown. And that's also a part of affordability people don't think about is the transportation. For every person that can live in this that doesn't need to have a car, that's a $10,000 to $15,000 a year raise. That's huge. And that's who this is intended for. It says it right in their mission statement. It's workforce housing, hospitality, et cetera, people that we think will be working downtown, which is easy to get to by bike from this location. So I will just read one paragraph from our letter. This is exactly the kind of mixed-use, mixed-income housing development that is desperately needed to address the housing deficit that is disproportionately impacting our low to moderate income neighbors. These housing units will be ideal for hospitality workers, public service sector employees, child care workers, and the many, many others who are increasingly being priced out. So please support this. Let them build as many units as possible. It is appropriate here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yellen, I have a card for you.
Yes, ma'am. Josh Allen here today. Since I was not the applicant, I filled out the speaker card, but will summarize some of the changes that have been made and to reiterate what was stated before, that this plan was in fact recently approved. In September of 2023, Pat Shea took this plan to City Council. The property was rezoned at the rear so that 63 units across 5 buildings could be put on this site. I also want to make clear that that site was all going to be, or 4 buildings were going to be 45 feet in height. Even though we are asking for a height increase, if you take all the buildings and add up all the height, we are decreasing the height of this project. Our buildings that are adjacent to the single-family homes are shorter than the buildings that were approved by City Council. We're asking for a 5-foot increase across the buildings only on Bull Street, but the rest of the buildings are coming down in height. It amounts to an over 40-foot height decrease across what could be built by right. In addition to that, as was stated previously, we are decreasing the number of bedrooms on this site. We can go back and forth. Do we need more units, or is it going to cause a traffic problem? And we're kind of squeezing both sides here. We have decreased the number of units, but increased the number of parking spaces significantly to account for the commercial units that were going in. We looked at this as a benefit across the board. A decrease in height, a decrease in rooms, an increase in parking. We also have agreed to dedicate some of these units to affordable housing. And so at each step of the way, we believe that this project that we are proposing today is an improvement from the project that can currently be built by right. We are hearing a lot of concerns here that this neighborhood should not have multifamily, this neighborhood shouldn't have commercial, the streets are too narrow, the traffic is going to increase. That was approved by City Council in September of 2023. It came before this board first. It was approved by City Council. The site was designated as a good site for a mixed-use development. We're trying to take the good site and make it a better site. And so we appreciate your support today.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Young. Ryan Yarls?
He had to
You had to leave?
He had to leave.
Okay. I'll take your comments as his.
Thank you.
Hope Callaway? Please state your name for the record. You got 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Hope Callaway. I've been a resident at 22 West 60th for about 12 years. I agree with Commissioner Stevens. I think that the neighborhood would do well to be developed. I think that a lot of the development plans look really great. The concern about traffic, in my opinion, is not necessarily about the parking or about the number of units, but regarding the construction. If you are creating an underground parking lot, you'll obviously have to have a lot of trucks coming in and out of that neighborhood to dig that. I think that that will cause a huge disruption for neighbors. Also, it's a school bus route. I think that that will create a lot of issues in the morning. Traffic on Bull Street is dangerous at times for pedestrians already. There's no traffic light until you get to Victory, so that's a major concern. I also have concerns about their decision to cut down a lot of the trees. Not only does that affect the curb appeal of our neighborhood, what distinguishes nicer neighborhoods from less desirable neighborhoods is often the amount of trees, so that's a big concern as well. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Becky Willard? You have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Becky Willard, and I asked that you put up the chart of the email that I sent that compares last time and this time. I have a visual impairment, so I'm not going to touch it.
No, we'll start your time as soon as that comes up.
Thank you. It's there. The public comment.
There it is.
This one? Combine.
Right, right there. Yes, thank you. Perfect, thank you. So I support the development as what was approved last year. And So I'm here to request that you deny all variances, which includes the 4-story, which is not in sync with the neighborhood, and then also the 9,000 square foot, which runs along 60th Street. So I live on 60th Street, and there's one house separating me from the development. I'm right next to Miss Hope. The next thing that I'm asking is that if you see this chart, I'm comparing the development plans from last year to this year. And what they did as a result of being requested to do affordable housing is they removed all the 3 and 4 bedroom units. So, and what they did was replace it with 1-bedroom units or studio units. And that, we need more affordable family housing. And so I'd like to see that come back in. A lot has been stated about traffic. It's a nightmare to get out there. It's dangerous to get out there, to cut across, onto Columbus, or to turn left or right onto the Bull Street. So I'm asking that you do a new traffic study, put a traffic light in there, and add speed bumps to both 59th and 60th. I've already submitted to the city requesting that there are speed bumps because we have so much cross traffic already. The other thing is the trees. Why are you cutting down the trees? The name of the developer is Live Oak Living, and it's hypocritical to cut down all the live oaks and all the mature trees. So, and specifically in the areas of 20 West 60th and 20 West 59th.
Sorry.
Thank you.
All right, Ashley Willard?
Hi, my name is Ashley Willard. I also live on 2460th Street. I'm a SCAD student. So I actually had a few recommendations and concerns. So as someone who doesn't have a car, I do walk around the neighborhood a lot, and I think that we also need crosswalks around that area, because as someone who tries to cross those streets, it's just you make a run for it and you hope you don't die, because people won't stop for you. So if they're gonna have that many people there, especially a place that seems to be targeting young people who probably won't have cars and probably will have bikes or nothing at all, you need crosswalks. Secondly, I also agree with adding bike racks, because young people most likely won't have cars. And also, I agree that we should add more family rooms, which will not only benefit families who need affordable housing, but also will benefit the people who are financially benefiting from this apartment complex, because young people are more likely to move away and families are more likely to be more permanent residents, which leaves less gaps of empty apartments for them as well. So, thank you.
Thank you. Dave Liebhauser?
I'm Dave Liebhauser, and I'm just here to say 4 stories right there is obnoxious. I can't believe that you even consider that. Look at the area around. We've got 1- and 2-story buildings everywhere. This is a family neighborhood, and I just don't think it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Elder, would you like to respond to those comments? Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't get your card. Can you take it up to Sally now?
Sure.
You can go ahead to the mic and state your name.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Pam Edwards, and I'm here to say I think the 4-story building is inappropriate for there, but also that I have property in that area and manage property in that area, and
the majority of them do not have driveways. They have a car, it's parked in the street. And that's where their company comes and parks in the street. So having all this, the commercial spaces and stuff, you're going to have the people that work there also, but the people that are come and shop. And it's going to be a huge congestion. But I just think that's 85 apartments or 85 rentals, he said. So I don't know how he classes that, but, and 14 commercial, that's a lot of, parking and traffic and people going around. And these are family neighborhoods. They're there with their children and everything, but I just think it's way too big. The 3-story, 4 stories, out of place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty. Now, Mr. Elder, would you like to respond?
Yes. Well, I think I can start with one of the simpler ones to answer, which is we definitely will be having bike racks, moped parking, and accommodating that on site. It's something that we have in the project as well. It just wasn't something that we put in there because the main focus was the questions on parking itself. As for trees, the sites that we are building on do not currently have any trees on them. The site is this site.
The 20 West 60th and 20 West 59, those trees.
We're not tearing down any of those trees. This building is remaining. This is where the project ends, on 60th.
There's one other.
There's this building which we're
Okay.
preserving.
Hold your comment, please.
We're preserving this building, so no, we're not going that far. And the same thing for the other one. So we are not impacting those. We're actually bringing more trees in, and we'll be working with an arborist and with the city to make sure that we bring in those tree lawns. Also creating sidewalks, and we will be also implementing crosswalks, which is something that you'd have seen in the plans as well. Let's see. So once we start developing it further with the city, we'll be working through all of those various aspects. We also are hoping to try to get an additional bus stop because we realized that there wasn't one in this general vicinity nearer to the site because it just makes sense. For some reason, as we looked at it, we wondered, why isn't there a bus stop? So we were even considering creating a bus stop on that sidewalk, but that's something that we have to work through with traffic and engineering and also coordinate with CAT because we believe that there needs to be a CAT route in this area. I believe people have to walk all the way over to either Abercorn or Montgomery to get a bus. And it makes absolutely no sense to not have one on Bull Street. Bull Street is a thoroughfare that can take you straight into the heart of the city and all the way out to the south side. So, because then it turns and then it can connect. So that's something that we're also hoping to do in the future. And I think it will take not just our voices, but the community's voices in helping address a lot of the deficiencies that exist for the transportation, public transportation within the city. And I do believe that it is a site that we can show this is about creating an even more walkable, livable city and eliminating all these dry areas. And when I say dry, I mean there's nothing for the neighborhood to go to even have a little corner store if there's a corner store, to just get a quick meal if they needed to, or go to a store, or have an office within the neighborhood and not inside their house. So the other big one is still the question on the 4 stories. And whilst we understand the concerns, I think what we're really trying to do, and you can see it here, is reduce that overall 4-story impact. It's really more so a 3-story feel that you get unless you go far from it. We'll continue to work on developing the massing to help it soften that impact even more. But we hope that you, at least especially with this image, can see that we're not just giving you 4 stories at the street edge. It is a 3-story expression. And at this height, just in case anyone's wondering, this height right there is at 36 feet. So that's all I have, but thank you.
All right, thank you. You got questions? Yes, please.
Well, I got you, just curious. And I don't want to stir up anything too crazy, but I forgot to ask you when you were up, have you guys engaged anybody from a civil standpoint just yet? On the heels of this flooding we have had, I do know that area does have a tendency to have some water issues. But just
We
curious.
started looking at that already. We are facing a similar situation on another site.
Okay.
So we've been working on the types of ways that they deal with stormwater retention on site and getting those fit in. And that's part of why also the underground parking does help and make sense, because we already have to create those retention areas within the site in order to build it. The site currently, the majority of it is hard paved, so there aren't as many requirements for us for additional stormwater offset, but we want to make sure that we implement that to help offset any further issues.
Okay.
But you don't want to store it in the cars.
No, it won't be.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes, sir. And this goes to the, there's been several comments on, having 4 stories right there on Bull Street.
Yes.
What would be an impact on your project if you reversed it, going from 2 to 3 to 4, going back from Bull Street?
I would say that actually may not be a great solution, because I believe what will occur is you're then moving the larger mass buildings right next to the smaller single-family home buildings, and that's something that the community said they did not want.
Okay.
So that's why we started to make sure that we addressed the stepping as we kept going further back.
I know there's some spacing between where your
Yes,
your
there's
project
spaces.
stops and that single-family residence there.
This one is part of the project. It's owned by it will be acquired by the developer that I'm doing the project for.
Okay, so there won't be a single-family resident right up against your...
Yes, it will still be there. We're still keeping it, and we're going to be renting it out in the future.
Okay, so you just own that parcel?
Yes.
Okay.
The whole thing is being sold as one.
Okay.
Everything that we're proposing here, it's one complete sale.
As I look down Bull Street, there's not a structure of that mass in that area on Bull Street that I can recall.
There is now, but across the street is the closest. It's more so about...
Close to 3.
It rates as 3 stories. Let's see,
That's that yellow.
Did I close
That's
it?
that yellow structure, right?
Yeah.
Did I close it?
It just seems like a bit much right there on that corner.
So
Yeah.
immediately across the street, if I were to go here,
Yeah.
there's this
Big house?
house here. And this one, well, you don't see it now, but there's an addition. That's a 3rd story right here, because that upper area in the roof is definitely fully accessible. And then otherwise, it's mainly the 2 stories. And then you have
Until you
the
get further
barn.
beyond those apartments.
So immediately south of our site is still more commercial and industrial.
Yeah. I think I'm in favor of the project. It's just that size right there at that corner.
I think we may be able to explore the massing and see how we can adjust to continue, because you're taking the steps already. Oh. And as Mr. Yellen just let me know, and we're still below the 45 feet, which was what was previously.
It just seems out of place.
But yes,
Yeah.
no, I think that's something that we'll continue to study, especially on that corner.
Could you go back to the map that has the map that shows which buildings are 3 stories and which ones are 4?
Yes, I can.
There it is.
444, and these setbacks have been further increased, which is why it's not really visible at all from the street, from street view. And that's based on public comment and working with the MPC. MPC staff pushed us to really think through how we develop the mass and craft it to create less of a toll impact. They used the example of just further down the street and also those examples on Victory as to how when you have a full 4 stories right at the edge, what that feels like. And so we continued to explore it and bringing it down. And that's why we took these setbacks and made them even deeper. The setbacks on the top floors are as far as like 15 feet from the front versus what this was showing previously was 5. But these buildings are 3, and then it steps down to 2.
I was thinking 3, 4.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So that middle building there, that's the 4-story.
Yes.
I think that in the rendering that you have, yes, that where.
I don't see it.
You've got that,
This one here.
yeah, the breaking up of the massing where you've got the 2-story and then it cuts it back to the 4-story. Is there not a way to do that to that middle building as well?
I believe that also happens there, but what you're seeing, I guess it's hard. Let me see if I can zoom. We do the same thing here, but you can't see it. We actually have it reading more as a 1-story mass immediately at the street, and then it steps back.
But on the site plan, where you're just looking at the plot,
Yes.
It doesn't show the setback.
It doesn't show that setback as it is now. So we refined the setback somewhat. The
And you
set
just
plan
don't-
was prior to the public comment.
You just don't have an exhibit that shows the middle building setback yet?
No.
Okay.
Other questions?
I was just wondering whether you could flip and have the 3-story on the street with the 4 in the middle that people don't have as much access to, and then step down after that.
I think it's something that we can explore. As was stated before, what we will be coming back, there's still additional due process for this. So we're going to continue to move forward with it, working with everyone. We still plan on working and meeting with the community to show them where we're at. I know that they have many concerns, and some of the concerns, no matter what we do, it will be there because it is something that will be an impact. But what we want is that this project is a positive impact. We want it to be something that they can look at and say, we were part of making this what it is, and it's doing what it needs to do and doing it well. That's what we hope for. That's what the developer pushes us to do, and that's what my team at my firm, that's what we're doing this for. That's what we love. It's Savannah. It's our home, and it's where we continue and want to continue to be.
Any other questions? I have one, or maybe a comment. Can you look at the construction routing? I heard that question about the routing, and I know from experience that routing and construction traffic can be a huge nightmare for residents.
Agreed. So in early discussions with contractors, many of them have said that the site, fortunately, it is a large site, so they're able to stage it well. And ideally, they would stage it where the northern portion is what gets built last, so that they can deal with the excavation, get the parking underground, get the other buildings up, and therefore try to minimize how many trucks need to be going back and forth. And also, they can use that northern site for parking, for construction stuff. And so, again, that's something that is means and methods for a contractor, but we have been looking at that.
Understood. It might be well worth it for the city to look at a bond for the roads, too. They'll be traveled on by a number of construction trucks, but All right, thank you. That's the questions I have. Anybody else have anything?
I have a question. This is actually for city manager.
Would you put your microphone on?
Yes. Mr. Melder, has there ever been discussion of four-laning Bull Street?
No.
I'll use a term of art that Mr. Elder's been using, and that's something that we can explore. I'm not familiar with any plan that.
So the answer is no.
And one other thing is we're also paying impact fees, so the project will be paying impact fees and all the taxes involved with it, so we'll be doing our part.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Any discussion? Has anybody got a motion?
I'll move to grant petitioner's request with only the second condition.
And
That
can we
this- of
see
the
the
conditions
conditions
recommended by
again?
staff. That's the traffic study, not the, sorry, I turned on my mic off. Including the traffic study, but excluding the affordable thing that we left out of
He
it.
already has affordable in here. Can we include what he has
You're right, I
documented
think
he's
he's
willing to-
already, yeah, I thought that was already part of something.
Yes.
A separate commitment.
If I can address that, just anticipating a motion, what the condition says would read as if the entire building was affordable. What the commitment was for 12 units of affordable at 60 to 80%.
You've already separately made that commitment regardless of what happens.
There's a
later.
sheet that they had presented
Right.
here that showed a breakdown of apartments and the affordability ranges they were going to consider, and, yeah.
So it seems like if they've already made, if they have a signed commitment, I don't know, we need to apply a second condition on them.
Well, maybe we could apply a condition that list of affordability be included in the project.
Okay, what she said.
Okay.
To that effect, for the two conditions.
So do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
All right. Okay. Ms. Amick?
No.
Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Yes.
Mr., Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Plunk?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
The 4-story sticks me, no.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
I too say yes. Motion carries.
We will have another bite of the apple.
That was my thought.
Yes, we will have another
And-
bite at the apple.
Because I'm really, what they come back based on community input,
Right.
we need to look at that. And we still, as Mr. Stevens said, we still have a little heartburn about that 4 stories on Bull Street. I mean, it's just, so please take that into consideration.
That was my thought. It allows them to move forward with the project. Seems like everyone likes something about the project. This allows them to keep moving, but to take these things into account before we reconsider it again.
We have to vote twice.
Yes, and for-
There is, okay, the general
Yeah.
development plan, and then the special exception, yes, thank you. So do I have a motion on the special exception? The special exception, can you help us out with exactly what we're voting on for the second item?
It's number 2 as shown here. The special exception is to construct one building with a footprint of 9,000 square feet.
Yes, okay.
Just for clarification, where exactly on the site plan is that 9,000 square foot building?
It's
Right
right
there.
Hold on, I don't see your cursor.
It's the farthest to the south and just
The
before the
3-story on the
2-story.
bottom.
So it's right
The
here.
3-story farthest to the
That's
south,
a 9,000 footprint.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Are we ready for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I think so.
A motion that we grant petitioner's request with the same two conditions.
All right, seconded that motion?
I'll second it.
All right. Okay. Ms. Amick?
No.
Ms. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Melder?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Plump?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
And Mr. Welch?
Yes.
I too say yes. We're approved.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
Hope it comes back good, because it's giving us some heartburn.
Jimmy Parker, called his
All right.
shirt. Thank you for your attendance.
We have two more short items. No presentations, no approved staff reviews. Other business is appointment of an officer, secretary. I've asked Mr. Wywoody to take that position, and he has agreed. So we have a secretary now. Yeah. You have to take my word for it. The final item that we have is the discussion regarding summer hours. I think Ms. Wilson was going to tell us what the summer hours were going to be.
Basically, after talking with staff, they've made a request and wanted to know, or basically I've agreed to extend the summer hours to basically the end of September, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. So, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right.